Well, hey, everybody, this is Heidi St. John. Welcome to the podcast today. I'm glad you guys are here. Today, I'm going to do something that I have not done before, and that is we're going to address a topic that has been on my heart in the last year and a half for sure, and that's the topic of loss and grief. And I've got some very special people that are going to be joining me throughout this episode to share some stories that I hope are going to encourage you and bless you. And we've prayed over this podcast before we started recording today, and I hope that it really blesses you. I've got a special guest in the studio with me today. Shirley Mozena is an author and a speaker with Stonecraft Ministries, and she's a longtime grief share facilitator, a two-time widow. We were just talking about that. We're going to get into it in a second. She writes from lived experiences, and she is the author of Remembering Hannah, which is the story we're going to be talking about today with Gary and Mari Malychewski. And we're going to talk about the grace that carried their family through an absolutely unimaginable loss. You guys are going to love this episode. I think it's going to encourage and bless you. This is the Heidi St. John podcast. Stick around. I think you're going to be encouraged. All right, you guys, thanks for being here today. Before I jump into it, today's podcast is being sponsored in part by my friends at the Functional Medical Institute, and you can find out more about them by going to homeschoolhealth.com. All right, I'm really excited. I'm just going to jump right in. Shirley is joining me today. Shirley, thank you for being here. I'm so happy.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
I read the book. So it's important for people to know this is going to be a fun interview. Gary happens to be my UPS man. Gary and I go way, way back to my front porch when I met him.
He knows everything you order, doesn't he?
He does. He knows everything I order. And I was immediately struck by just his friendliness. Yes. And one of the very first things that Gary said to me, having been a very new homeowner up on Livingston Mountain, I think the third time I met Gary, he was like, I lost my daughter. Oh. One of the very first things that he ever said to me. And with no context around it or anything, over the months that followed, he shared a little bit more and a little bit more. And finally, and I've just grown to love him and got to know his wife a little bit as well. And they're going to be here to share their story.
Yes.
But I want to find out a little bit about you because you've taken their story and put it to paper and turned it into a book.
Yes.
And we're going to be talking about that with them. But first with you, why is this topic so near and dear to your heart?
Well, it's actually almost 20 years ago exactly when my first husband of 40 years died of a chronic illness and actually ended up being a brain bleed. But before that happened, I was a Christian and I thought, I'm a Christian and I can get through these things. It'll be difficult, but I'll get through it. Well, I found out how very difficult it really is to lose a loved one, especially a spouse, especially a husband. But God was with me. He was with me through that terrible time of grief and actually revealed to me that I could maybe find another mate, maybe get married again. And so I did. 2 years after my husband, Bill, died, I met Blair. And we met on a matching site and clicked very quickly. We would never have met had we not been on this site. We got married. Our families blended just perfectly. It was a beautiful thing. He was a teacher, still a teacher, and I had been a music teacher. And so we really connected in that way. Well, after we were married, we traveled, and 17 months later, one evening we were getting ready for bed, and he said, I've got a headache. And then a few moments later, he said, I think you should call an ambulance, which I did. And moments after that, after they came, within 5 to 10 minutes, he was unconscious, never to regain consciousness. And later on, they told us he had a brain aneurysm and there wasn't anything they could do for them. So after 17 months, my hopes of spending the rest of my life with this man were dashed away, actually.
Wow. I'm imagining, we've gone through here, and people who've been listening to my show for a while know that there have been several people around me my age this year who have passed away to cancer, and I'm in touch regularly with their spouses, just, praying for you. How are you doing? But there comes a point, I would imagine, when the phone calls stop, because people get on with their lives, right? When the phone calls stop and the flowers are not delivered to your house anymore and you're there
No more
alone.
cards in the mail.
Mhm.
Yes, they do have to. People have to go on with their lives. That's just how it is. That's why, actually, as I said with my first husband, I thought I could get through it on my own, but I discovered after 6 months I was still feeling really, really terrible. So I found,
Yeah, 40 years.
40 years,
Wow.
good and bad,
Yeah, of
very
course.
good at the end. But I found Grief Share. And that's what really helped me work through my grief and just touch on things that I didn't even think about. And so after he died and I moved forward, then of course, after Blair died, I again rejoined that. And since that time, I've been a facilitator for Grief Share myself. And then when I remarried a third time with Jim, we do it together because he was a widower himself.
So you have this shared experience
Yes.
with him. And I'm curious, I know a lot of people are going to be asking about this, how Grief Share works. And because you work with them now, don't you? You're working with Grief Share.
Well, we're just facilitators at our church. It's a 13-week program. And there's just daily, weekly lessons that you work through. And it isn't just that you work through some grief and you get past it. You reach out to Jesus Christ for your comfort and hope and the Word of God, which is really the only thing that can help you get through this difficult thing.
Yeah. And it's life-changing.
Yes.
It really is life-changing. And I don't know that it, at least for me and the losses I've experienced over my life, I think that you never really get over it. You learn to live with it.
Exactly.
Would you say that's fair?
I kind of like to think of it as you've got a cut on your heart and you've stitched it up and it's there. It's better, but it's still there. And the memories are there, but it definitely is just something that everybody is going to go through at some point. So that's why I even wrote the books that I wrote. It's about grief and loss, but hope, hope in eternity.
Yeah. Yeah. And it really is true that as Christians, we don't grieve like the world does. What does it look like, Shirley, to grieve with hope?
Well, you cry.
Yeah.
You read you read the Bible, and when you're by yourself, especially if it's a loss of a spouse where you're used to having that person with you, you've got that person who is there. You just don't see him, but you sense his presence. And I've experienced that completely. And it's been a wonderful experience, and I'm so glad I didn't have to do it alone.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so important. Boy, we were not meant to do this life alone.
No.
We were not meant to be alone. This was the very first lesson that Adam learned, right?
Right.
In the garden. It wasn't good for him to be alone.
And I even said that. I remember saying that. Man does not live by bread alone. Man does not live alone. He needs a mate.
Yeah.
And that's
how God made us.
Yes.
It's really true.
Yes.
Before we bring Gary and Mary in, I'd love for you to tell us how you first met them, because obviously today's podcast is going to be centered around their story of losing their beautiful daughter, Hannah. How did you meet them?
Well, actually, I met Mary first, and we were at a prayer group at our church, and just very briefly, we just introduced ourselves to each other, and she very quickly said, "This is a hard time of the year for me." It was near Christmas time because our daughter, we lost our daughter in a terrible accident just before Christmas, and really, that's all she told me, because then the meeting started, and then a couple of years later, they showed up at our Grief Share group. They signed up for the class, and they told us that it had been some time, more than 20 years since the accident happened, but they wanted to make sure they had covered all the bases in their grief experience. And so, of course, then we heard more about their story.
Yeah. What made you realize, oh, hey, this is a story that needs to be told?
Well, at one of the sessions, Gary was talking about his experience as that UPS driver that he still is, where he nearly ran over a little 7-year-old girl on a bicycle, but he was able to stop and not hit her, but he took the little girl and walked her up to her home and talked to the dad, and just that experience of being with that father, and what would I do if I would have hit her? What would it have been? So it was very strong in his mind, he was telling us. And then just a few months later, he experienced that same thing with his own daughter, with another driver, and how he was able to forgive him in spite of the tragedy. So when he told that story, I said, wow, Gary, I like to write articles. Maybe I could write an article about that. Would you let me do that? And he said, sure. So the two of us, actually my husband, Jim, and Gary and Mary met, and we realized that this isn't an article, it's a book. And we wanted to know more about Hannah. So that's how the book started.
I love that. You guys have worked with a lot of people who have, I'm sure, in Grief Share. Because you don't write books about everybody.
No.
What was it about Hannah's story that really stayed with you, that made you think, this needs to be a book that people can get a hold of?
Well, I think through our experience of talking to people with losing their spouse, losing their family member, another family member, or their children, it is by far the greatest grief when parents lose a child.
Yeah.
It just is.
It's so backwards in the order of creation, in the order of everything. Yeah,
yes,
you're not supposed to bury your
future.
kids. Yeah.
Yes. And so, and I think the parents of children, not adult children, but children, it's even greater. And it's just, so there's other parents out there that need to hear about this and read about this and see how they coped with it. And it wasn't perfect, but they made it through.
Yeah. And I think that's the main thing. Right?
Yes.
And when you meet them, and I'm excited for my audience to hear from them today, because when you meet them, the joy of the Lord is there.
Definitely.
And that is a gift.
Yes.
It's a gift from the Lord. From your perspective and from your years in ministry and as a Christian, I think I would say something that has been kind of rattling around in my heart for several years is this understanding, or at least from my perspective, that Christians, as a general rule, we do not have a theology for suffering. We struggle with it. We struggle with grief. We don't know how to process it. We don't like to talk about it. What do you think is one of the things, or maybe a couple of things, that Christians especially, maybe even churches, misunderstand about grief?
That you don't get over it in a week or two. When the funeral's over, no, it's not the end. It's just a process. Something flitted through my mind and I just forgot it. But I think they don't really understand that there are some steps you need to take to get through the grief. And I actually believe that God allowed these circumstances in my life for a purpose of reaching out to these people. Yeah. And doesn't mean I enjoyed it when I was there, but I can encourage other people that it's not the end.
Yeah, I think that's really true. And it's good for people to remember that God uses all things together for good.
Oh, yes. Yeah. That's one of my favorite verses.
So it's so important. You said a moment ago that, and it's obviously true, that a loss of a child is so uniquely devastating. Why do you think, as the church and as Christians, we're still having such a hard time? I have a friend who recently lost an adult child. I've never seen a woman so broken in my whole life. Oh, yes. And boy, you struggle to even come alongside. So what do you even do?
Well, they're your future. Your children are your future. You're counting on them to carry on. When you lose your parents, you've lost your past. When you lose your spouse, you've lost your past with them and your future life. But with your child, it is your future. And they're a part of you, and it's just difficult. I had a stillborn baby, and people think, well, you never got to raise her or do anything. I've got that same little stitch in my heart for that little girl that I will one day meet. Yeah, it's really true. It never leaves you. No. I loved this book. I read it on a flight
somewhere. And actually, my daughter, Summer, Gary gave us each a book to read. And so Summer was reading her copy and I was reading mine. And when we came together after that weekend, when I came back from an event that I was at, we both noticed kind of the same thing. Just the way that you told the story, which if you lived here, it really resonated, weather, and we can all just sort of put ourselves in that position. And I thought it was really good that you didn't, in the book, doesn't really rush healing. I noticed that you didn't offer platitudes. You didn't, you were really just trying to tell the story in a way that was truthful, but without this sort of need to feel like you had to tie everything up in a bow. Was that intentional? I'm assuming it was.
Yes, it was. It was. And that's what I try to do with all of it. I try to, life isn't perfect, and we don't handle things perfectly, even though we like to think we can and would. But so there's always that hope.
Before we bring Gary and Mary on, what is it that you are hoping that listeners understand about grief as they listen to their story today?
They are not alone in their grief. They have a God who loves them, cares about it. I mean, he says he understands grief. He says he's not going to ever leave you or forsake you. So those who believe in him, he is right there with them, right alongside them.
Yeah, so good. Shirley, I'm so glad you're here to sort of cue up this conversation and frame it for us. If people are interested, so you've written other books too. If people are interested in finding out more about you, where can they go?
Well, they go to my website, shirleymozena.com. The books are available there. You can read sample chapters if you like. I write a weekly blog, mostly on hope and encouragement.
I love that. I love that. We're going to take a break and invite Gary and Mary onto the show. Shirley, it's just been a delight to have you. Thanks for being here.
So glad to be here. Thank you.
Well, by now you guys know that my last year medically was pretty challenging for me. In February, I was diagnosed with a tumor, and I'm not going to lie to you guys, it scared the living daylights out of me. And one of the very first things that I did after calling my husband was reach out to my friends, Dr. Mark and Michelle Sherwood at the Functional Medical Institute. And these guys walked me through from the diagnosis to the surgery to treatment to recovery and did not miss a thing. I praise the Lord for the work these guys are doing. It was their decision to put me on peptides, and those peptide injections and the advice that they gave me, I think, is one of the main reasons why my recovery was such a success. I was back on the road 6 weeks before the doctors anticipated that I would be. And of course, beyond the power of prayer, which you guys know I believe in, I am so thankful for the work of the Functional Medical Institute. So whether you guys are where they are in Tulsa, Oklahoma, or you are somewhere else around the country like I am, I want to commend them to you. Reach out right now by going to homeschoolhealth.com to get connected with the work that Dr. Mark and Michelle Sherwood are doing at the Functional Medical Institute.
Joining me right now are my friends Gary and Mari Malychewski, and we're going to be talking about your daughter today and the story of Hannah. You guys, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
This is a delight for me. I said in the intro that Gary is my UPS driver.
Thank you so much for having us on, and I will tell you it's a joy just getting to know your family, and Jay's an amazing guy.
Thank you.
Like I told you before, they say there's a great man or great woman behind somebody else.
Yeah.
Jay's an amazing guy.
He is.
So you're very, very fortunate.
Thank you. Well, it's a blessing to have you guys here. We had a wonderful fish fry at your house a couple weeks ago. Everybody's still talking about that. Summer's trying to get me to get your recipe for gluten-free fish fry. So we'll have to talk about that after the show today. I want to take you guys back to your family. Tell us a little bit about your story, maybe how you met and when you got married. Mary, I'll start with you.
Well, we met in a Christian coffee shop that we used to go to on Friday nights, and we would minister.
In this area?
Yeah, this was back in the 80s.
Okay.
And we were part of a group of friends that met every Friday and participated in it. And I would date different people, and Gary would date people. And eventually we ended up together. So
I love that.
we got married in November of 1988.
That's right. We were talking about about that? You guys got married in 88. I got married in 89. Did the 80s. Come on.
Yeah.
I mean, this was the time. I love that. So your family, tell us a little about your kids and your family before, because I want to give us a little bit of history, what your family was like in the 1990s, in the early 1990s.
Well,
Hannah was your oldest,
yes,
correct?
she was our oldest. She was born in 1990. And then we had Caleb, who was born in 91. And then we had Josiah, who was born in 94. And then we were done.
Okay.
We thought.
Yeah.
But God had different plans.
Yeah.
And I homeschooled them. Back then, there wasn't a lot of resources, but I used to use Christian Liberty Academy.
Okay.
And they would send me a box of books, and we'd do what we needed to do.
Mm.
And Hannah was the first one, and then of course Caleb, he was just in kindergarten when Hannah passed, and Josiah was just a little guy, so he was doing Legos and just playing around while they were doing their schoolwork and
So
stuff.
very young family.
Mhm.
Very young family.
Yeah.
So what does kind of everyday life look like for you guys before, like, let's say in early December of 1997?
Well, we were, of course, prepping for Christmas and getting ready to wrap up the schooling for Christmas break. We would make cookies and pass them out to people, to family members or to people who were in the neighborhood, like the paper boy or recycle driver or, different people like that helped in the community. It was like it felt like it was a ministry that I had with my children that we would do as a public service kind of to acknowledge people who, were doing a service for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Gary, he was working at UPS, driving over to on the other side in Oregon, like an hour commute. And he would come home at night. And because we homeschooled, our kids didn't go to bed at traditional like 9 p.m. times. And we would play soccer. He would play soccer with the kids in the house. And our house, literally, there was the front door and then there's the back door. The back door was a goal and the front door was a goal. And he would do that with them. And they would go to bed late at night, like 11 o'clock or something. But we had a lot of fun. And Gary also was hunting in December. And he had come home from hunting one Saturday. And my daughter had this silly reindeer ear hat thing. And she's like, we were going to Chinese food. And she's like, Dad, wear this to the restaurant. And he did. And they were friends of ours who owned the restaurant. So they were all laughing at Gary. And he's like, I'm doing this for my daughter. And then the next day, which was Sunday, we went, we'd been prepping that month also for the Nutcracker. We were going over to the Arlene Schnitzer concert hall with our children, with all three of them. We went to the evening show so we could dress up and we would watch the movie and read the book so that they had a background on what we were going to. And we did that on Sunday before our daughter died. And then on Monday, we were together with other homeschooling families making cookies, and we'd divvy them up, and then we were going to pass ours out to our people, and they were going to pass theirs out to their people.
So you guys had just a really, for all, anybody watching, pretty an idyllic home life, happy.
We felt like it.
Yeah. You're really happy.
My parents because they didn't believe in the homeschooling, and we'd get a hard time from my parents, especially.
Yeah.
And, but my kids, they looked forward to it when I got home, and we'd let them stay up late and we'd play soccer, and I'd knock Hannah over or I'd knock one of the boys over, and they were having fun. And, but we would let them stay up late because, they still excelled in homeschooling. And, a lot of people, I've told a lot of people, that I had more of a relationship with my daughter than a lot of people have with their kids living with them for 18 years, because homeschooling allows you to have so much one-on-one and family time. And if, because I was a low level UPS driver, I was low seniority, I couldn't pick out the vacations that they would correspond with their school. So it didn't matter because we were homeschooling them, and we'd still go and we would go on vacations and we'd still do things with our kids. and our kids had a ball. I mean, they absolutely had a lot of fun, and I still, in my mind, I still remember my kids and Hannah doing things that, but we had more of a relationship. I had more of a relationship with my daughter because of it and stuff.
I love that. I think that's one of the most beautiful things about homeschooling is it gives you what a traditional school takes away. And that really it's the gift of time, which is extremely precious, as you guys well know. Shirley was talking about something that happened to you, Gary, when you were driving just a couple weeks before Hannah's accident. You want to share a little bit about that?
It was in July, so
it was a couple of months then. Okay.
Yeah, and what had happened was back in those days, UPS, they had their productions and everything that they wanted us, to get hit, and I, I was driving way too fast. I was going around a corner in the town of Vernonia, and I was in the complete other lane. And I know that if I would hit that little girl, I would have killed her. I was going way too fast. And if a car would have been coming on towards me, I would have had an accident. And so I pulled over and I talked with the little girl and I asked her.
Did she dart out in front of you?
No, she was just riding her bike like a little girl will do.
Yeah, and you went over
I was the one completely out of line. And so I talked with her and I found where she lived. And I went up to her dad and I started telling him about what had happened, but I didn't tell him I was speeding because I didn't want him to know that I was out of line. But I started talking about this little girl down on the road. And he starts bawling, and then I start bawling.
He starts crying because
he starts crying. I start crying, and we're both crying like crazy there. And he goes, "Wait, did you hit my little girl?" I said, "No." And he goes, "Then why are we crying?" I said, "I don't know." And I left that. And for 2 weeks, it bothered me like crazy. Why did I react in the manner that I reacted? And Mary remembers me having a really difficult time with it. And I finally came to the conclusion that the reason I went up to that dad was I was seeking forgiveness. Because I knew that I was out of line and I knew that I was wrong. And I was seeking his forgiveness is what I was seeking. And I really believe God prepared me for what we went through.
Hannah's story that day begins with a really simple, you set it up really well, Mary, just saying you guys were baking cookies and you're doing the homeschool thing.
Yeah.
And you had made a habit of taking cookies out too. And I would imagine that would have come from Gary's career, right, as a driver himself.
Service.
And so you had, the service to other people and a sweet thing to do. Tell us a little bit about that morning.
Well, we got up at 7 like usual, and we're just getting ready for the day, for the school day, and trying to package up the cookies for people. And we heard them come down the road, the alley, out back. And, I don't really remember everything distinctly, but we wanted to take them out to them, and she was going out there, and all I remember is that he continued driving, and I didn't see my daughter, and I just started screaming because I saw her in the road, and I was just screaming and screaming, and I told the boys to stay in the house, and I ran out there, and he stopped, and I looked at her, it's like, oh, this is not good. And I ran back in the house and got the phone and ran back outside and called 911. And I told the boys, stay in the house, do not come outside. And they were talking to me about resuscitation efforts. And I was like, I don't know what I said, but I know that there was no resuscitation that was going to happen. And then next thing I know, there's the police there. And it was just crazy,
So this was a waste management truck, right?
Yes.
It was like a big
It was
like,
Waste Connections.
Waste
actually,
Connections. So it was a big garbage truck,
Yeah.
right? Coming down the street.
26,000 pound.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she ran out there to give him
No,
cookies.
she didn't run
and
out there. She was looking for him, and then Mary was calling for her, and so she then was passing, and then when she realized that the truck was going to hit her, she squatted down because of the fact that, and she's already a small little girl.
Yeah, yeah.
So, it's one of those things where, those trucks are pretty high.
Yeah.
So, it's like, the driver, he jumps in his truck, and, I know from experience, I can't see in front of my truck.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes, mistakes happen, things
Right.
happen. Nobody
you-
purposely ever does something
No.
to hurt them and hurt people. And that just isn't the way it is. And so, but
But you were home alone then, right? Because Gary, you were at work.
I was working.
Yeah.
So then what happened? So you would have called your husband or called, I can't, because you told me the story, Gary, before I even read it in the book.
I
But
don't even remember the order of, I think I might have called our pastor I don't even remember calling our pastor, to be honest. So I don't even know, but somehow our pastor, he ended up there. I think he told us that I called him, and I don't even remember calling Gary. I don't know who called UPS or whatever. I really,
because they actually went to your boss went to find you, as I remember.
So the way UPS works is they're able to, contact you, and then they told me to go down to the McDonald's, and I knew from being an experienced driver that I was either in a lot of hot water or something's not right.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was up on Pumpkin Ridge Road, and I called my wife, and I just absolutely screamed, and I know I blew her ears out.
Mm-hmm.
I screamed in horror, and then I cleaned myself up, and I'm like, okay, what happened? And she's like, Hannah's dead. And I just screamed the top of my lungs, and then because I just could not believe it, what I was hearing, and I had her, okay, tell me what happened. And I just screamed again.
Mm-hmm.
And then I drove down Pumpkin Ridge, and I was crying, and I'm telling you, as I couldn't hardly see. I was just, it was a horrible, horrible day.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very, very satanic, evil thing.
Mm-hmm.
And, I tell people a lot of times when you go through something, it was like I was dropped into a big old pit, and they put the cover on me, and it was completely dark, because then what ensued after this whole entire thing, you just to get through what you just went through is very difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. And you guys, you wrote, I mean, it's in the book. And I mean, I cried through a lot of the story because I didn't know Hannah, but I know you, and I love you guys. And I know Jay does too. And it hurts when you see somebody hurting, but I thought it was really beautiful. And the Lord in his mercy had prepared you, Gary, as you said, really for this moment, because when you got to the house, something happened and you saw the driver there. Take us back to that moment.
My boss drove me home, and I had an hour to think about the whole entire thing. And my boss was just like, are you okay? Are you okay? And I just was praying, and I was just thinking about everything that God had just done to prepare me. And I knew what I had to do. And it wasn't easy to do, but I knew that God wanted me to let Chris know that I forgave him. And so I got to the house, and I said, I need to see the driver. I need to see the driver. And
they didn't want you to see him initially,
they
right?
weren't sure, and they put so they finally get around there, and there was 5 police officers surrounding him, and I didn't know what was going on, but I realized afterwards they didn't know what it is, why I wanted to see the driver.
Sure.
And so I gave Chris a hug, and I told him that I forgave him. And it's not an easy thing to do, What Erica Kirk did in forgiving.
Yeah.
God commands us to forgive others,
Mm-hmm.
and he forgave us for so much that he commands us to forgive others. And it's not easy. It's not an easy thing to do. You do what God, and I can guarantee you, for a long time after that, I would fight with just Satan working in my heart, because I was angry and I was upset and I was very, very depressed. And you go through a lot of things. You can't, it's like going through that pit. It's so dark. You just know that there's going to be a light at the end. But right now, all you feel is that darkness around you, and that darkness, the depression that I didn't realize I was going through. I was very depressed, and you just got to keep going through and trudging through. And finally, at some point, you will see a light. And, I got to tell you, this is, it's difficult. This happened 26 years ago. And I can tell you that my heart is happy again.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. I never forget, and I have scars, but my heart is happy again. And God wants us to be victorious in life. And it doesn't just, it takes time for everybody. Everybody has a different schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And, I remember, reading about King David, how his child was dying and he was praying. He was in sackcloth. And at some point, King David got up after the child had died, and everybody deals with things differently.
Yeah.
And there's also, everybody goes through different challenges in their life. And there's people with, things that they're going through that they're in that pit too, but it may not be as desperate as what we went through, but they still got to go through that.
Mm-hmm.
So, you never compare each other's, depth of their pain and
I think
what they're
that's
going
kind
through.
of what Shirley was saying, the same thing, that grief has its own timetable and different people handle it differently.
Mm-hmm.
You guys, Mary, I want to ask you, because I'm imagining this was hard in your marriage.
Oh, yeah.
And
It was stressful.
yeah, very, very, how would you say that this impacted your marriage,
Well,
especially in the early days?
I feel like God had prepared us for that too, because the month before she died, we went to a family life marriage conference, and the couple who spoke about the death of their son 20 years prior.
Oh, wow.
Like the whole weekend. It was about the death of their son and how marriages don't, like there's 80% of marriages that fail, how people grieve differently. Just all this information that was thrown at us.
Why are we hearing about all this grief stuff? We came for a marriage conference.
It was terrible. I didn't like it. I'd never experienced anybody super close to me who had died. And we had both decided we were going to get a book. I picked out a book on a marriage enrichment, which to this day I don't know where it's at. And he chose the book called that they had written, Rick and Judy Taylor had written, Learning to Live Again After Death. Well, I don't know. My mind is blank. Forget that. It was Rick and Judy Taylor. They wrote a book, and I kept wanting to put it back on the shelf. And Gary's like, Mary, you're gonna have to deal with death one of these days. I said, yeah, but this is the death of their child.
Yeah,
Like
we're not
who
going
wants
there.
to who wants to even think about that?
Yeah.
And so anyways, we got home from that, and I put that book on the shelf, and I never really went back there until sometime after Hannah had died. My sister got the book off the bookshelf, and she read the bio on the back that said that Rick was a pastor down in Eugene, Oregon. And she contacted them and told them that we were at that conference that they had spoke at. And then his wife, Judy, kept trying to call, but we had call waiting. We didn't have call waiting, so it would ring busy, and we were getting tons of calls because even though there wasn't like internet back then, this got out all over the United States. Like we were getting letters and cards from people. We had no clue how they knew. And so anyway, she finally got a hold of me on what would have been Hannah's 8th birthday. And we talked, and it was so helpful, because she was really encouraging. She was there when her son died. You know, she was on watch. Like I was on watch. You know, my kids were with me, and one of them died.
Yeah.
Her kids were with her, and her son died.
So she could relate to
and
you.
she was such a blessing. Over the years, I would write her and about different instances of hard times, and she would just, you know, encourage me and everything. And so when Gary got home, you know, I was like, you know, 80% American, you know, we just learned all this stuff. So we were able to apply it. And Gary would go through the house. I mean, we had tons of people over. There was people coming and going from our house helping. And Gary would just cry and cry. And he didn't care who was around me. I was just more, I just kept it to myself. I didn't really.
I think that's true of you today too, I would say.
I would sometimes
anything around. This is my brief knowledge of my UPS man.
I would sometimes like, I never see you cry and stuff, you know, is everything, are you even, and I would cry. I would get in my UPS truck and I'd cry and then I'd clean my face up and then I'd get my package. I'd put my smile on and say hello and deliver my package. And then I'd get back to my UPS truck and I would cry until my next delivery. And thankfully I was on a rural route to where I had a long distance to go. It was a horrible thing to go through.
What were some things is there anything, I guess, that you remember, either one of you, like moments in your marriage when you're like, we're going to have to fight for this and this is how we're going to do it?
Oh, yeah.
You mean like when after Hannah had died?
Mm-hmm.
It was, you turn on each other.
Yeah.
You don't realize it, but you're both going through such pain that you turn, you recluse back, you go into solitary, because you don't want nothing around you. It's just a very difficult thing to, and you gotta work through it. You gotta push through. And there's times that, you know, I remember getting into a really bad fight with her one time, and I came home and I said, I haven't wanted to come home the last 4 days. And my wife's like, Mary's like, well, I haven't wanted you to come home the last 4 days.
Like,
and that day, but that day I realized that we both were hurting and we've never had a fight that bad. We still fight here and there, but nothing like what it was. But I realized at that point that we both hurt so bad deep.
Yeah.
We were hurting deep. And it was really difficult.
Man, I think there's a lot of people that kind of had this sort of, you know, buck up little camper, you know, sort of attitude about loss. When you guys are wrestling through the questions that I would imagine you're asking, you know, why did God allow this to happen? You know, why our daughter? You know, all of those questions. What did your faith feel like when it didn't feel strong?
Well, I clung to Psalms 139 because it talks about us being created in our wombs and all our days are ordained.
Yes.
And I knew it doesn't matter. That was her day to go. Right. And that helped comfort me because she wasn't doing anything wrong.
Right.
She was doing something good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's what made it so hard. Is I was like, Lord, this is something we did for you. We were reaching out to our community in these ways. Yeah, you let her die, you know? So it was very challenging. And, you know, then you have people like, you know, asking, when are you going to get over it? And then you have the people saying, oh, you deal with it so well.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's just, there's so many variables.
And when you deal with things, we have secrets. And, you know, for us, we started drinking a little bit because of it. And then
trying to numb the pain.
Years
later on, later on, just because we were dealing with it. So we didn't drink we didn't drink at that point in time, and we started drinking, and we don't drink anymore. But just to cover up, and I don't want to come out as, there's going to be people who are going to think, well, I can't believe that you did that. But the reality is there's a lot of people that they're hurting so bad. Yes. And they do it in secret, and you don't even know about it. In fact, when our friends actually turned out and found out that we were doing that because of the book, Mary had to go and talk to them and say, hey, just let you know this is in the book, because we want people to know.
My really close girlfriends, I wanted them to
worried that
hear it from me.
That you had been drinking?
I wanted them to hear it from me, not from the book that I...
But,
it's amazing to me how judgmental people are too.
Because I was keeping secrets from, we're close friends for many, many years.
Oh, and she'd be wondering, why didn't you tell me that?
But nobody knew this stuff about us. We did it in secret. We did it in secret.
We
really did.
Mm-hmm. And why do you think that was?
Because we knew it was wrong. We had family members that had alcohol issues, and we didn't want to be a bad example. Boy.
All my family, I grew up in a home that was very dysfunctional. My dad could drink 2 fists of vodka, and he was. So our example that we went through, it was really dysfunctional, and all my family members had issues with drugs or alcohol, and we just we were the one. We were the one that
mechanism.
I was the one that never did stuff like that, and my dad used to give me a hard time and say, why do you need this crutch of Christianity? You never get yourself into trouble, and so my dad was, he looked at Christianity as being a crutch, and I would say, Dad, if you're right, then why don't you just let me have my crutch and be happy and let my heart be happy and stuff, And I said, but Dad, if I'm right, you're going to a place that it's not going to be a good place,
Mm-hmm.
And but it was really tough. We had really tough upbringings, both of us.
Yeah.
And our kids don't even know the half of what it's tough to be bringing up,
And praise the Lord.
Praise the Lord for that. Is right.
For that. Yes. I have a similar story. I want to touch really briefly on a couple of things. You guys ended up having more children.
Yeah.
And I think this is a really sweet story, because you had said initially 3 kids, and you're like, you were done. So what changed, Mary?
Well, we'd been married, we had 3 kids in less than 6 years of marriage, so I can see us 10 years down the road, and we just have so many kids. But then after Hannah died, I just really wanted another child. And I didn't care if it was a boy or a girl. I just wanted another child. And we kind of did things quickly too. I moved from Hannah dying to let's get a vasectomy reversal. Seriously. And we checked into that. I found there was a doctor back in the day through family that was part of Family Life. I don't know if he's through part of Family Life today, or if he was just, people could
in a network.
Yes. Yeah. And so we called him, and he actually did the reversal at the discount he gives to people who are, I think he would do blended families, and he did that for us at the discounted price. And I immediately got pregnant. As soon as it was the quickest pregnancy he'd ever had happen from a reversal. And so literally, Hannah died in December of 1997. And by April of 1999, I had our 4th child.
Wow.
Yeah. So, it was a lot of that pregnancy was even.
And you went on to have three more children?
Yep.
Well, we had to have another girl. And I wasn't going to stop. I wasn't going to stop until I had another girl.
This Abby? What's
Abigail.
her name?
Yeah, Abigail.
Yeah.
I wasn't stopping until I had another girl for my wife.
Wow.
There's nothing like a little, little boys are wonderful, but little girls are wonderful too. And so
just very different.
I wanted Mama to have my wife to have another little girl. So
I've met Abigail. She's a sweetheart.
Thank you.
She really is. You guys experienced compassion, I think, in ways that a lot of people maybe never even will, because they won't walk through what you've walked through. How important was it? And how was the community, the body of Christ around you during those years when you were struggling? Especially, I would say, during that time. So obviously right around the accident, but then in the years to come. Because I'm thinking there are people that are listening to this that know someone who's suffering, who's lost a child or a spouse, like Shirley was saying, and they don't know how to respond. We don't have a theology for suffering. We don't like to talk about death. We push it off. We don't want to talk about it. So what were some of the things, if you can remember, some of the things that people did for you that were really helpful?
Somebody sent us a little thing during right about the time that Hannah died, remember? And we'd get it, and they did it for like 7 or 8 years. And we looked forward to it, remember?
The little angel decoration?
Yes.
Oh, we used to get these little angel figurines.
Somebody would send it to us. We had no clue who it was, but we looked forward to it every single year. And they did it for like 7 years. And it meant so much to us.
Well, I would imagine too. I don't think about this a whole lot, but I mean, the fact that Hannah died around Christmas time would have made that just
horrible.
I mean,
our pastor was amazing.
Yeah,
Pastor Neil Curtis. He was our liaison. Like we had the Columbian and Channel 2, 6, and 8 on our doorsteps in our back alley. Oof. And he would talking to our neighbors, and he would decide who we thought was worthy of doing an interview, and we really appreciated that. And
we wouldn't let them have any pictures of our family. We only
let them have a picture of Hannah.
I said, you got a picture of my daughter. That is it.
We didn't want them.
I didn't want my face in the paper.
Grieving parents,
I really didn't. I didn't want it.
But yeah, God was really good. We were heavily involved at that church, and so we had a great community of people, and who would come over and help us out, bringing meals or helping to clean, or babysitting the boys so that we could go out and do something.
And you still remember that?
Oh yeah.
And I got to tell you, after all this had occurred, all the years are going by. Because I work for UPS, I'm number 00127008. And if I was to quit today, UPS, you know what, I would have just been a number and stuff. And I can tell you, Ron Middlestad and Daryl Chambliss from Waste Connections, they meant so much to me. They meant so much to me because I was so happy when I found out that they didn't fire Chris Wright. And in fact, Chris Wright, to this day, he now runs a facility in Canby, Oregon. And he wasn't just a number to the company. And my daughter wasn't just a number to the company. And when we wrote the book, I really wanted Shirley to put something in there pertaining to businesses and even with Chris, because when you have a tragedy like this, there's no winners whatsoever.
Yeah.
And we're all losers. We're all losers. And if it isn't because of God, there's no hope. There's nothing to look forward to. And Ron Middlestad and Chris Chambliss, but Ron was just amazing. Ron would take my phone calls and I would call him every so often. In fact, I just talked to Chris Wright yesterday, just because, Chris, he told me that he read the book, and I told him that Shirley had told me that he'd sent an email and that it was a real positive response. And Chris really said, he goes, yeah, it really helped me, Gary. And he goes, I really appreciate it. And so Chris is doing really good.
That's good.
And
this could have destroyed him. I mean, if you think about it.
He never drove after that.
Yeah, the mercy that God poured out over him in the midst of this tragedy, that God in his mercy prepared you for, and that you had been prepared through that marriage retreat that you went to, that God knew. And it's a reminder to us that he really does. He is near to the brokenhearted. He never leaves us, never forsakes us. And you guys have really experienced something that most people, I mean, this is most parents' worst nightmares, which you have lived through.
It is.
It really is. I think if someone is listening right now, there's so many places I could take this, but I'm going to run out of time. And I'm hoping you can minister, because for me, I just know so many people in my own life right now who are just grieving. One of them is grieving the loss of a son that she lost, and one of them just lost his wife. Another one just lost her husband. Everybody's in their 40s or their 20s, you know. And I'm wondering what you would say if somebody's listening to this right now and they're grieving, and they feel like in that pit. Gary, you're saying you felt like somebody put you in a container and put a lid on top of it. What would you say, Mary, to people anyone who's listening to this, who's grieving and they can't see a way past it?
I'm telling you, I couldn't have done it without the Lord. I really couldn't have. And sometimes I didn't even want to read my Bible, but I did anyways.
Mm.
And it takes time. I mean, every day that passes, it gets a tiny little bit better, though you don't realize it at the time.
Mm.
And those beginning days, they are the hardest. They are so hard. They're so dark. But God is with us. I mean, He knows everything. He knows our thoughts before we think them. He knows the days that He created for us, how many there are to be, how many hairs are on our head. He loves us so much. I mean, He sent His Son to die on the cross for our sins. And let me tell you, I am a sinner saved by grace. Because not only, I lived for God and I did ministry. And then when I was still hurting and stuff, I turned my back and started doing things I shouldn't have done by the alcoholism and stuff. But God forgave me even that. And He's amazing. And He will help them and He will carry them and walk with them. He's right there beside them going through those dark times. Even though it doesn't feel like it, He is there. And he does stuff to prepare us. He really does. And I feel like He really prepared me and Gary for dealing with our daughter's death.
What do you say to the mom or the dad or the spouse who's carrying the sort of the pain of the what ifs? What if I, could have done something different that day? What do you?
My favorite, be still and know that I am God. Sometimes shut your mouth. Don't say what is in your heart. Because when you let that out of your heart, when you let that out, shut your mouth and don't let it out. Just keep it in, because you lash out. We lash out sometimes and say things that we wish you wouldn't have said, and you can't take it back. And just fall on, be still, and know that I am God, because He's there with us.
Yeah.
That's true. If you could leave, Gary, if you could leave somebody with maybe something that you learned, I think one of the things I love so much about the two of you is that you haven't let this tragedy, this loss of your beautiful little girl, steal your joy. You're some of the most joyful people I've ever. I love it when Gary comes to my house and drops off packages. It's like,
so do I.
It's like, yeah, it's great. I know. It's great. Sometimes he's bringing salmon with him. It's great. And
that's for my freezer, though.
It's great. You guys obviously love other people, and you do it well. And I'm wondering, I would imagine that through all of this stuff, you look back now and you wouldn't change. Like you don't want this to have happened, but you see that God is working all things together. And I wonder, what have you learned? There's something that you think, I learned this about God in the midst of this, and you want other people to know it.
You do not take, and other people who go through tough things. I had a lady tell me, because she wanted to know what it was like, what I was going through. She wanted to have empathy for me. And all she had was this most favorite cat that passed away. But she wanted to have empathy for me and don't judge other people. And I just showed her appreciation, even though I'm like, I don't think that cat was to the same level, but she wanted to have love for me.
Yeah.
And so
She was trying to
it's
identify.
like the old lady who put in 1 penny and she gave more than everybody else. Don't allow yourself to put yourself into a judgment, because the people want to show you love and empathy, and sometimes they don't have the ability to, but don't reject it. Love those people and
so
realize that they're trying to give you what they have.
That's so good. That is a really, really good reminder, because I can think of stupid things I've said, you know, to people who are grieving or whatever, you know, and then what comes out of my mouth and I'm just like, that was bad. You know, you take that back. And I love the grace that you guys offer, and your lives are marked by it. And I consider myself richer to have known your story and have heard it, and to be in your lives, even in just a little way, even if it's just coming over for fish fry. I mean, I will come to your fish fry anytime. I love it.
Jay and you are always welcome.
Well, thank you.
You have a wonderful husband. I don't know if you've ever interviewed him in here, but I
have.
think
You should listen. If you Google it, Gary, if you Google, we actually did for our 32nd or 33rd anniversary.
Jay's an amazing
We did an
fella.
interview. We interviewed each other.
Oh, cool.
Oh, that'd be so cool. I'll
The
look
ups,
for
the
it.
downs, the good, the bad, the ugly.
I loved it when
It's an ugly.
I loved it when Charlie Kirk and Erica were on, you know, before Charlie had passed, and they were talking between them, and they were
love.
Erica is an amazing woman, and I actually sent her a letter and a book, and you know, people are too hard on her. They got to give her grace, because I'm telling you, they got to give that girl grace. She's an amazing woman. She really is.
I agree. All right. So this is the book for those of you who are watching this online, Remembering Hannah, A Journey Through Loss and Hope. I want to thank you guys for sharing your story. If people are interested in finding this book, they can get it on Amazon, correct? And maybe some UPS guy will deliver it to their house.
I think it's going to be the other people.
We won't say who those are. You guys, it's just been a delight to have you, and thank you for bringing Shirley along. It was great to interview her as well.
Shirley's amazing.
She did a beautiful job bringing your story to print, and so I appreciate it. God bless you guys. Thanks for being here.
Thank you
so much.
All right, you guys, I hope this has been an encouragement for you, as it has been for me. It's not every day I get to interview my UPS guy and his wife, but I hope that they have blessed you as much as they bless me on the regular. I hope you guys will check out this book too, Remembering Hannah, A Journey Through Loss with Hope, and you can find it at Amazon. It's really worth reading. It won't take you very long, and you won't be able to put it down. Ask me how I know. We love you guys. Love your people well today. And I'll see you right back here again at the intersection of faith and culture.